What happens when you take a Western and strip away the vast landscapes, the open horizons, and the freedom to ride off into the sunset? You get The Hateful Eight, a film that traps its characters in a single room during a blizzard and watches what happens when nowhere is safe and no one can be trusted. This isn't your traditional Western. There are no clear heroes, no simple moral lines, no triumphant rides into town. Instead, director Quentin Tarantino gives us something closer to a stage play wrapped in Western clothing, where dialogue cuts deeper than bullets and paranoia hangs heavier than gun smoke. Released in 2015, this film takes the Western genre and turns it inward, creating a pressure cooker of suspicion, violence, and buried secrets. It's a murder mystery, a character study, and a commentary on justice, revenge, and the lies people tell themselves. Welcome to Picture Mavericks. Today we're exploring what makes The Hateful Eight different from other Westerns, the themes lurking beneath its snow-covered surface, and why this claustrophobic approach reveals something unique about human nature. Let's begin. The story takes place in Wyoming, years after the Civil War. A blizzard is coming, and a stagecoach carrying bounty hunter John Ruth and his prisoner Daisy Domergue races to reach shelter before the storm hits. Along the way, they pick up two additional passengers: Major Marquis Warren, another bounty hunter, and Chris Mannix, a man claiming to be the new sheriff of the town they're heading toward. They take refuge at Minnie's Haberdashery, a stagecoach stopover. But Minnie isn't there. Instead, they find four strangers: an elderly Confederate general, a quiet cowboy, a hangman, and a Mexican stable hand. 8 people total, stuck together as the blizzard rages outside. John Ruth is paranoid, and with good reason. He believes someone in that cabin is connected to Daisy, planning to free her before he can deliver her to hang. He's right to be suspicious because nothing is quite what it seems. Identities are questionable. Stories don't add up. And as the film progresses, the mystery deepens. What makes this setup interesting is the confinement. These 8 people can't leave. They can't escape each other. The storm outside is deadly, so the danger inside becomes unavoidable. The film uses this trapped situation to strip away pretense and reveal what people are really willing to do when survival and self-interest collide. The first half of the film is mostly conversation and observation. Characters testing each other, sharing stories, establishing dynamics. The second half becomes something different as violence erupts and the real purpose behind this gathering becomes clear. The Hateful Eight explores trust, or more accurately, the impossibility of trust in certain circumstances. Every character has reasons to lie. Everyone has something to hide. The bounty hunters need to protect their bounties. The prisoner needs to escape. The strangers need to conceal their true intentions. In this environment, honesty becomes a liability and deception becomes survival. This creates a fascinating dynamic because the audience is also kept in the dark. We don't know who to believe. We're piecing together truth from fragments, just like the characters themselves. The film makes us complicit in the paranoia. There's also a strong undercurrent about the aftermath of the Civil War and what it left behind. Major Warren is a former Union soldier and a black man navigating a world that treats him as less than human despite his military service. General Smithers is a Confederate officer still mourning the South's defeat and the death of his son. Their interaction carries the weight of that historical moment, the unresolved tensions and hatreds that didn't disappear when the war ended. The film suggests that the Civil War didn't really end. It just changed. The violence, the racism, the grudges, they all continued in different ways. This cabin becomes a microcosm of a broken nation where old wounds fester and justice is whatever the person with the gun says it is. Justice itself is a major theme. John Ruth calls himself a hangman, not because he hangs people, but because he brings them to be hanged legally. He believes in the law, in official justice. But the film questions whether that distinction really matters. Whether legal violence is fundamentally different from personal violence. Whether justice is real or just revenge wearing official clothing. Daisy, the prisoner, is treated brutally throughout the film. She's hit, chained, and dehumanized. The film doesn't shy away from this violence, and it creates discomfort. We're meant to feel uneasy watching her treatment, even knowing she's supposedly a murderer. This raises questions about how we justify violence against those we've labeled as deserving it. The film also examines loyalty and what people are willing to sacrifice for those they care about. Without spoiling specifics, the true connections between characters reveal themselves as the story unfolds, showing that some loyalties run deeper than survival instinct. Visually, The Hateful Eight makes bold choices. The film was shot in Ultra Panavision 70, an ultra-wide format that seems like an odd choice for a movie taking place mostly inside one room. But this creates an interesting effect. The wide frame shows us everyone in the space simultaneously. We can watch reactions in the background while dialogue happens in the foreground. The format turns the cabin into a stage where we observe multiple performances at once. The cinematography also captures the landscape in the opening and closing sequences with stunning beauty. The snowy mountains, the vast emptiness, all filmed in a format that emphasizes scale. Then it traps us inside, making the confinement feel even more intense by contrast. The 3-hour runtime allows the film to take its time. This is a slow burn that builds tension through dialogue rather than action for much of its length. Characters tell long stories. Conversations wind through topics. The pacing is deliberate, almost theatrical. For some viewers, this approach works beautifully. The dialogue is sharp and the performances are compelling enough to sustain interest. For others, the pacing might feel stretched, particularly in the first half where the film is primarily setup and character establishment. The score by Ennio Morricone is haunting and adds tremendous atmosphere. The music creates unease and tension, supporting the paranoid mood without overwhelming it. It's one of the film's strongest elements, using sound to build dread. The production design deserves attention. The cabin feels authentic and lived in. Every prop, every piece of furniture contributes to the period atmosphere. The attention to detail helps ground the more theatrical elements in something that feels tangibly real. The violence, when it comes, is graphic and unflinching. This is characteristic of the director's style, but it serves a purpose beyond shock value. The brutality forces us to confront the reality of what these characters are doing to each other, removing any romanticism from the Western violence. The structure includes a chapter-based format with narration at key moments. This breaks up the film and provides context that characters themselves might not reveal. It's another theatrical element that works within the confined setting. The Hateful Eight takes the Western genre and subverts many of its traditional elements. Classic Westerns often deal with good versus evil in relatively clear terms. They celebrate individualism, honor, and frontier justice. They use wide-open spaces to symbolize freedom and possibility. The Hateful Eight inverts much of this. There are no clear heroes. Honor is questionable. Justice is murky. And the space is confined, trapped, suffocating. This approach reflects a more modern, cynical view of the Old West. Instead of mythologizing that period, the film treats it as a brutal time of violence, prejudice, and moral ambiguity. The characters aren't noble gunslingers but complicated, often despicable people doing what they need to survive. The film's exploration of post-Civil War America feels relevant to ongoing conversations about historical wounds and unresolved tensions. The way characters carry their allegiances, their traumas, and their hatreds into that cabin mirrors how societies carry historical conflicts forward across generations. The treatment of race in the film is direct and uncomfortable. The language used, the dynamics shown, the violence depicted, all of this forces confrontation with ugly historical realities. Different viewers will have different responses to how the film handles these elements, but the discomfort appears intentional. The confined setting also makes this film particularly interesting from a storytelling perspective. By limiting the physical space, the film intensifies the focus on character and dialogue. It proves that Westerns don't need sprawling landscapes to explore their themes, that the genre's questions about justice, violence, and human nature can work just as well in a single room. What the film asks us to consider is whether anyone in that cabin, or by extension in that historical moment, has clean hands. Whether justice is possible when everyone has committed their own violence. Whether redemption exists or if people are simply trapped in cycles of revenge and retribution. So what does The Hateful Eight offer us? It offers a Western stripped down to its most uncomfortable questions. What is justice when the law is just organized violence? What is honor when survival demands deception? What is trust when everyone has reasons to betray you? The film doesn't provide easy answers. It traps 8 complicated people in a room and watches what happens when their masks slip, when their secrets surface, when their true natures emerge under pressure. The 3-hour runtime and deliberate pacing require patience. This isn't a film that rushes to its destination. It takes time building atmosphere, developing characters, and letting tension accumulate. Whether that investment pays off depends on your tolerance for dialogue-heavy storytelling and your interest in these particular characters. The performances carry significant weight. Each actor brings depth to characters who could easily have been one-dimensional archetypes. The veteran Confederate general, the cynical bounty hunter, the mysterious prisoner, they all become more than their surface descriptions through committed performances. The violence, when it arrives, is shocking and brutal. This won't appeal to everyone. The film doesn't soften or romanticize what bullets do to bodies, what poison does to systems, what hatred does to human interaction. It's graphic with purpose, forcing us to see the reality behind Western gunfight mythology. What makes the film interesting beyond its plot is how it uses the Western genre to examine American mythology. The Old West represents certain ideals in popular culture, ideas about freedom and individualism and rough justice. The Hateful Eight suggests those ideals were always more complicated, more compromised, more violent than the myths acknowledge. The confined space becomes a metaphor for how we're all trapped together, how we can't escape each other or the consequences of shared history. The blizzard outside prevents escape. The suspicion inside prevents peace. And somewhere between those two forces, truth emerges, ugly and undeniable. Not everyone will enjoy this film. Its length, its violence, its moral ambiguity, and its subversion of Western tropes will alienate some viewers. But for those interested in how genres can be deconstructed and reimagined, in how confined spaces can intensify drama, and in how Westerns can comment on historical wounds that haven't healed, The Hateful Eight offers something worth examining. The title itself tells us something important. Not the heroic 8, not the brave 8, the hateful 8. People defined not by their virtues, but by their capacity for suspicion, violence, and betrayal. The film suggests that might be more honest than the myths we usually tell about that time and place. In the end, the blizzard passes. But what happened inside that cabin can't be undone. The violence, the revelations, the blood spilled in the name of justice or revenge or simple survival, it all remains. Just like history itself. This has been Picture Mavericks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.